Hello and welcome. It is I, Iron Raiden, back yet again with another new topic of discussion. Now, what has been the hot topic as of late? That is, of course, being Obi-Wan Kenobi. Now, full disclosure, I did not watch a single episode of this show. Does that give me the right to form an opinion? Well, it depends on how you look at it. It's really an educated guess and really taking into account all opinions surrounding this series. I mean, considering my knowledge and my history with Star Wars, considering all the very positive and very negative perspectives of this series, and mostly looking at certain prominent YouTubers who actually, who tend to stick in the middle of things. They don't really try to lean too far one way or the other. They don't try to let biases take over their opinions. And even some of these people are outright saying that this is a rather disappointing series. Now, I have also looked at certain clips, like I said, listen to what other people have been saying, and I think I can form this for myself and come to the realization that this series has been an absolute waste of time for everybody. When it comes to a series like this, when it comes to a character like Obi-Wan Kenobi, in the current position that he is in, basically stranded on Tatooine, looking over Luke Skywalker, dealing with the aftermath of Order 66, this series clearly shows that they tried to do too much with very little, and adding things that simply do not need to be a part of the story. It's really just overinflating this portion of the story for no real reason whatsoever, only to leave the characters exactly where they were from minute one. And it's just absolutely absurd. A series like this, or even potentially what could have been a movie, this is something that really only needed to be very nuanced. All it really needed to be was just focusing on Obi-Wan and dealing with the aftermath of Order 66, dealing with the loss of his friend, dealing with the loss of basically what has been his entire livelihood, instead of doing all this stuff where, oh yeah, we gotta force an invader. They have to be forced with another conflict, even though you take dialogue portions from previous films, things from like A New Hope, when we know good and damn well where we left them off with Mustafar. That was the last time they'd seen each other up until A New Hope. And knowing where the final episode left off, where Obi-Wan sees Anakin and where Anakin straight up says to him, and of course this is a spoiler, where he didn't kill Anakin Skywalker, he killed Anakin Skywalker. So Obi-Wan doesn't even get credit for that. And so you get to a point here where previously Obi-Wan had left him for dead. And yet now we reach to a point here where for the most part Obi-Wan would see that, yeah, okay, my friend is pretty much long gone at this point. Why aren't I finishing the job and, considering and trying to prevent less destruction across the universe or anything like that? I mean, hell, even if you go back to Return of the Jedi, when Luke said to Obi-Wan, it's like, I can't kill my own father. And Obi-Wan's like, then the Emperor has already won. You were our only hope. Basically alluding to the fact, yeah, you gotta go kill that motherfucker. Instead of Luke pushing forward and then going through the adversity and redeeming him as opposed to just straight up killing him. And so Obi-Wan has him at a place of mercy yet again, and yet does nothing about it whatsoever. It's things like that to where I'm like, okay, again, just trying to do too much with what very little story really needed to be here. The Empire Strikes Back is perhaps considered the slowest of all the Star Wars films, and yet it's considered to be, for the most part, the best Star Wars film. And a lot of that film had great nuance to it because a lot of it was the dealings of Luke's training and Yoda teaching him. It's not like Yoda was whipping out the lightsaber and going toe to toe with Luke, flipping and shit, cutting down trees, just absolute destruction across Dagobah. It's like, no, none of that. A lot of it is just dealing with Luke's training, patience, concentration, motivation, all that stuff. It had nothing to do with all this extra stuff. That's what it was about. And that's what this series really should have concentrated on being, is being more nuanced, just being more story driven in that aspect. Just, you could have had voiceovers with Qui-Gon Jinn as opposed to some cheap cameo at the end of a Force Ghost. And some would also argue that Qui-Gon's training actually wasn't completed to where he can't appear in full form Ghost, where if anything he could just speak to him and things like that. And that's all that series really needs to be. It's like, yeah, you can have like little, of course, action moments and stuff here and there. You can have certain ongoings, but at the same time, the series really just tried to overinflate this whole idea of these characters and where they're at. It's just completely unnecessary. And to think that they're trying to consider a season 2, oh yeah, if the fans want it. I'm like, no fan really wants this, because they know where this story is at and what serves that story. You don't need to do that much with this. I mean, some people would even say that the prequels tried to do too much, and it's like you tried to go a little too far. Maybe you could have pulled back on certain things here and there. And George, for the most part, did that, as the sequels went along, until you get to like Revenge of the Sith, which was, for the most part, a very good film. Like the Jar Jar stuff he pulled back on, he actually did listen gradually as the prequels went along. And here, they really don't consider that sort of thing. It's not about just throwing us Vader and Obi-Wan just for the sake of another duel. It's not about that. No, it's about the nuance. It's about the characters' moments and just them dealing with the situations mentally. You can have slower moving moments. Not everything has to be flash this, flash that. And the Reva character as well, everything I've seen coming from that, I'm like, this character just makes no sense with a lot of the story. A lot of the interactions with Obi-Wan and Luke and Leia also really conflicts with what's been established with their relationships further on down the line. And it's like, you're really pushing it just for the sake of giving fans, these fanboy moments and stuff, just so we can see these characters interact. Unless you have motivation behind it, unless you have proper reasoning, unless you actually have proper writing involved with moments like this, then they're empty. You can look at them in isolation. It's like, yeah, I've looked at a couple like little clips, little moments here and there. And it's like, in certain isolated moments, it's like these can be okay and these can work in their own right. But you can't just throw anything against the wall and just, it's like, oh yeah, it's Star Wars, it's Obi-Wan, it's Luke Skywalker, automatic amazement. It's like, no, you have to have something behind that, because without the story there, it means nothing. Hell, you can compare it to like a wrestling match or something like that, where unless you actually have storylines going into it, unless you have the proper promos going into it, if you have a match just for the sake of a match, it's like, yeah, you can have the spectacle, you can put on a 5-star match, but it's not gonna carry weight unless you put story behind it. And that's really what it comes down to, is that this series in and of itself was completely unnecessary. It could have been something good. It really could have been. And again, I wish I could care about it that much more. I really, really do. You think I want to sit here and act like and just have a lack of investment, considering everything that they've done with Star Wars since they've had it? You think I want to sit here and harp on? It's like, no, but it's just disappointing time and time again that they just completely don't want to see reason and realize what you can do with something like this. You have so much to work with, and yet you keep going back to the same old thing and just doing nothing with it. You're doing so much and yet so little at the same time. It's unbelievable. And that pretty much defies what this series is. And to think a season 2 of this, I'm like, again, nuance in the idea of a season 2, and considering how lackluster this first season was, that just goes to show you really have no idea what you're doing at all. Sometimes less is more, and in this instance, that is an absolute fact. You're trying to do too much. Stop going back to the well. Stop trying to show us Vader just for the sake of showing us Vader. It doesn't work that way. It's the same thing, like you could go back to the original Halloween film and things like that, like all those sequels where less is more. The less you get of the shape, the more it has like this looming cloud over you, this sense of dread, this sense of just, eeriness about it. When you keep them in the shadows, when you're not like just showing them like, front and center every day, you're taking this mask off and all this shit. It's like, no, that's what nuance is. It's all about low key. It's about picking your spots, knowing where to put the villain, knowing where to put certain moments for certain characters, so when they show up on screen, when they have their big moments, it has that much more meaning. It carries weight. When you just just usher them across the screen, you fucking throw a lightsaber around a flat, it's like it lacks substance. You can't keep doing that, and that's what it's all about. Less is more. That is a fact, and this series completely lacked that. Absolutely so. Anyway, that is my take on the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. I am Iron Raven, and I am out.